Long before the emerald-lit pathways of modern villages existed, before the clinking of anvils and the cheerful bartering of today's villagers, there existed something raw, something foundational, the skeletal framework of a forgotten people. Imagine Minecraft Alpha, not a polished world, but a digital sandbox overflowing with possibilities, limitations, and secrets lurking just beneath the surface of those blocky, pixelated horizons. It was in this primordial soup of code and creativity that the very first inklings of villagers emerged, not as the trading partners they'd become, but as enigmatic, blocky figures, test subjects in Mojang's grand experiment of populating the world. We see them now captured in the ghostly archives of early builds, crude, almost geometric bodies assembled from simple cubes, oversized heads perched on stumpy torsos, limbs like thick, bent twigs, their faces mere smudges where eyes and mouths might be. Their movement was a jerky, hesitant ballet, a stark contrast to the fluid animations we know now. Their AI a rudimentary script that often left them wandering aimlessly, bumping into walls, occasionally staring blankly into the void. Yet, within this imperfect shell lay a spark of ambition, echoes of a society that never fully took root. Whispered whispers in development logs and discarded document fragments reveal grander schemes than mere passive wanderers. Plans, sketched out and ultimately shelved, envisioned roles emerging from these testificates, as they were called then. The name, a playful portmanteau of testificate, as in subjects of testing, hints at their origin as purely experimental entities, vehicles for testing world generation and basic behaviors. We imagine farmers tending unseen crops beneath the pixelated sun, miners wielding tools that never saw, or builders raising simple structures that crumbled before completion. Farmer testificates might have pathfindedly towards barren plots, their non-existent sides held aloft, while miners perhaps shuffled towards stone clusters, their pixelated pickaxes poised for strikes that never materialized. Builders, the most speculative, would have laid foundations, placing blocks in predictable patterns only to abandon them, leaving fragments of half-elaborated walls dotting the landscape. These were not villagers, they were pieces of a puzzle, congealing into a shapeless mass of potential. And they were called testificates, a name born purely from their purpose as test subjects, a blunt reminder of their place in the developmental hierarchy, discarded lore waiting in the wings as the game evolved beyond these humble beginnings. Then came the seismic shift of beta, a period where Minecraft was rapidly expanding beyond sandbox origins, hurtling towards the polished release we recognize. The world was becoming richer, biomes more distinct, challenges greater. Yet, amidst this progress, the original testificates became a bottleneck, a drain on resources that threatened the stability of the burgeoning beta builds. Their rudimentary AI, their blocky models, the sheer density of potentially spawning entities in early village prototypes, it all strained the engine. So, in the monumental update of Beta 1.8, known as the Adventure Update, a momentous, almost shocking decision was made. The testificates vanished. They weren't just tweaked, they were purged from the codebase, erased from the game world. The villages they inhabited, those rudimentary collections of crooked houses and dirt paths, became ghost towns, empty shells standing silent under the digital sun. The removal wasn't gentle nor particularly explained to the burgeoning community playing in those early beta versions. It was a sudden, jarring absence. Consider the outcry that followed. Not loud perhaps in the vastness of the nascent internet, but a palpable wave of confusion and nostalgia within the player base. Those strange, blocky figures, with their almost unsettlingly simplistic faces and odd, stilted movements, had sparked a peculiar form of attachment. They were a flawed, enigmatic part of Minecraft's identity. Players remember the strange ambient sounds emitted by these early testificates, a low, guttural rumble described by some as almost bovine, others as vaguely mechanical, a sound no lost to the ages, adding to their ghostly aura. The silence left by their absence was deafening. Concept art from that era, unearthed much later, paints an even richer picture of what was lost. We see detailed sketches of village structures that never made it, majestic, multi-sailed windmiller towers capturing the wind for purposes unknown. Elegant covered wells with intricate tiled roofs suggesting communities that valued hygiene or ritual, grander meeting halls than the simple village squares we finally got. These weren't just buildings, they were blueprints for a culture that was dismantled before it truly existed. The purge wasn't just about code, it was about deleting a nascent civilization, leaving behind rumors and ruins. Players tinkered in creative mode, desperately trying to reconstruct those first Testificate models from memory or discarded assets, sharing their creations on forums, preserving the fragments of what was lost long before the modern villager would rise again from the digital ashes. The silence didn't last forever. The yearning, the sheer recognition that the world felt empty without its people, didn't go ignored, slowly, deliberately, began the groundwork for the resurrection. Scroll's meticulous code changes, hidden deep within the generation algorithms of Minecraft's full release version, reveal echoes of the past not erased but repurposed. Strings of code, seemingly nonsensical like that forgotten Testificate name, linger dormant, like genetic markers of a bygone era. They're Easter eggs left by developers, inside jokes for those who explore the game's deepest mechanics, subtle nods to the Ghost's village past. And then, with the release of the full game version 1.0, they returned. But they weren't the Testificates anymore. They were transformed, refined, elevated from mere test subjects into the villagers we know. Gone were the awkward blockiness and the unsettling sounds, replaced by smoother, more defined models. A diverse range of professions clearly etched in their attire: the white apron of the priest, the brown tunic of the farmer, the leather boots of the leather worker. Their AI was revolutionized, focused on purposeful actions, working at their designated job sites, sleeping in beds, wandering the paths between homes. But the true catalyst for their final iteration wasn't just developer design, it was the players themselves. Emergent gameplay, the unpredictable ways players interact with systems, forged the villagers' future. Players discovered that, left to their own devices, villagers had a peculiar habit of breeding relentlessly under specific conditions. They realized that trading certain goods, starting with the humble potato, then carrot, and finally the precious emerald, could be exploited on an industrial scale. Enter the Iron Farm, a magnificent, often monstrous creation that astounded even the developers. These farms utilized villager mechanics, their pathfinding, their willingness to collect items, their trading interactions to produce iron ingots at an absurd rate. It was gameplay the developers never explicitly designed, a system whipped into life by player ingenuity. But it exposed a fundamental flaw. Villager breeding and trading were being manipulated into a resource faucet far exceeding the intended rate. The Iron Farm became a monument to player creativity, but it also forced Mojang's hand. They couldn't simply remove the fun of trading or building functional communities. Instead, they had to redesign the underlying mechanics subtly. Trading values were adjusted over numerous updates. Emerald generation became more controlled, breeding conditions refined, all in an effort to curb the unintended while preserving the core loop of player-villager interaction. The villager, resurrected and polished, was no longer just an NPC, they were a core gameplay loop. A living part of the economy, shaped as much by the player base's ingenious and often world-breaking creativity as by Mojang's initial vision. The Testificates were gone, but their spirit, that spark of creating a living within the blocky world, had ignited something far more complex and enduring. Their ghostly presence lingers not just in the abandonment of ancient windmill blueprints or the silent echoing of their lost sounds, but in the very code that governs the bustling villages today. In the subtle nods buried deep within the game's logic, and in the knowledge that the figures happily trading emeralds or tending their crops stand on the shoulders of those forgotten, blocky pioneers who first walked the paths of Alpha, testing the waters for the civilization that would eventually rise. The villagers of today carry the echo of the Testificate, a blueprint refined by time, player ingenuity, and the relentless push of emergent gameplay, forever linking the primitive village experiments to the vibrant, complex societies we build around them. Welcome, fellow adventurers and digital archaeologists, to a journey through the forgotten corners of blocky worlds where time stands still and whispers of what once was still echo in the pixelated winds today. We venture beyond the surface gameplay and into the mysterious depths of abandoned village structures, hostly remnants of features planned but never fully realized, developer intentions left half buried in the digital soil beneath our feet. These aren't mere glitches or oversights. They're archaeological sites in the purest sense, offering us a window into the evolution of our beloved virtual realms. So tighten your seatbelts and prepare to uncover the secrets of ruined libraries, mysterious Mason foundations, and desert well conspiracies. The past isn't just history, it's a puzzle waiting to be solved. Deep within the winding lanes of villages scattered across the procedurally generated landscapes, there stand structures that defy explanation. Libraries, these once glorious repositories of knowledge, now reduced to empty shelves with yawning bookshelves that hold nothing but silence. If you've walked through these halls, you've likely felt that uncanny sensation like stepping into a room where librarians once whispered, scholars debated, and ancient texts were meticulously cataloged, only to find yourself in a space where the very concept of literacy seems to have evaporated into thin air. These aren't just buildings without purpose. They're archaeological sites in their own right. Abandoned digital ruins that speak volumes about Minecraft's turbulent development history. Dig deeper into these structures, and you'll discover something unsettling. Where books should be, there's only error shelves like open mouths waiting for stories that never came. Yet behind each empty shelf lies a tantalizing clue, a whisper of what might have been if game developers hadn't changed their minds mid-creation. Our investigation begins in what I call the ghosts of libraries past, where empty bookshelves serve as silent sentinels guarding secrets from an alternate timeline where reading mattered more than mining. Back in the early days of Minecraft's development village generation, libraries weren't just decorative, they were meant to serve as cultural centers where villagers gathered, traded in knowledge, and even taught players new skills through literacy mechanics. The evidence for this isn't just architectural, it's buried deep within game files, waiting for curious minds to uncover it. Data miners, those modern-day digital archaeologists, have found entire libraries of unused dialogue strings where librarians would have spoken of ancient texts containing forgotten lore about the very world players inhabit. Imagine walking into a village library, approaching a villager in a robe leaning over a lectern, and hearing them whisper conspiratorially about texts that predate even Ender Dragons and Nether Fortresses, texts that might have held the key to understanding the deeper mysteries of Minecraft's lore. These planned literacy mechanics would have transformed how we interacted with the game world. Rather than simply mining and building, knowledge becomes a currency of its own, with libraries serving as economic hubs where players could trade information for rare items or even learn new crafting recipes that remained inaccessible to the illiterate. The potential social implications were staggering. Villagers might have formed communities around literate scholars, farmers trading crops for knowledge rather than diamonds, and players gradually becoming accepted into village hierarchies based on their ability to read and understand the ancient texts preserved in these structures. But development priorities shifted, and these ambitious plans were scrapped, leaving behind ghostly libraries that stand as monuments to what could have been. These empty bookshelves now serve as poignant reminders of game design decisions gone awry, not fundamentally broken features, but abandoned ambitions that still haunt the digital corners of our favorite sandbox. As we stand amidst these silent shelves, it's hard not to imagine the alternate Minecraft where literacy wasn't just a mechanic but a fundamental aspect of survival, where the ability to read ancient texts unlocked abilities that raw crafting alone couldn't provide, and where village libraries buzzed with the quiet hum of scholars deciphering the secrets hidden within game code itself. Yet for all their abandonment, these libraries grace us with something invaluable. They're time capsules of developer intent, offering clues to the original vision of a more narrative-focused Minecraft where story unfolded through discovered text rather than player-created ones. From these literary ruins, let's now turn our attention to another mystery that has puzzled builders and explorers for years: the Mason mystery. Those perplexing stone brick foundations found in villages predating the game's 1.14 update. If you've explored older Minecraft worlds, you've likely stumbled upon these archaeological anomalies, patches of mossy or regular stone bricks where no buildings should logically stand, like ancient ruins peeking through the modern village landscape. These aren't just random construction errors. They're the crushed remnants of a much more complex village generation system that once envisioned more sophisticated stonework among the familiar dirt paths and wooden frames. As we examine these mysterious foundations, evidence from world generation code reveals something fascinating: ancient quarry pits that theoretically would have been carved into the landscape near villages, feeding materials to stonemasons who would have crafted the very brick foundations we now see as mere glitches. In an alternate timeline, villages might have featured entire districts dedicated to stonework, with specialized buildings where villagers would craft decorative blocks, stone tools, and perhaps even architectural elements that players couldn't otherwise create. But the code that would have generated these active quarry sites and their associated workshops was eventually simplified, leaving only ghostly imprints, a single layer of bricks where an entire workshop once stood, like a fossilized footprint of developer intentions long past. The evolution of the stonemason villager type becomes clearer when viewed through this archaeological lens. What we now see as a simple villager wearing a stone brick patterned apron might once have been a master craftsman with an entire workshop complex at their disposal, mining stone locally, quarrying materials on site, and creating the very decorations that now appear as rare trading commodities. Imagine walking through a medieval-style village where stonemasons actively worked their craft, with anvils ringing hammers against iron and stone, sparks flying as they crafted decorative blocks for the village patrons, and perhaps even trading rare stone variants that have since vanished from the game economy. These weren't just isolated craftsmen. They were cogs in a complex economic machine that planned for interdependent village professions, where farmers fed stonemasons who traded with librarians who taught players literacy connected to crafting manuals, each profession reliant on the others, creating more authentic and immersive communities than the simplified systems we see today. The evidence doesn't end at surface-level architecture. Diving into world generation code reveals that villages were originally meant to cluster around natural resources, with stonemason districts positioned near stone outcrops and quarry sites, a logical placement that would have made these settlements feel more organically grown rather than procedurally stamped onto the landscape. But the complexity proved too demanding on performance, and the vision was scaled back, leaving behind these puzzling stone brick foundations as archaeological fragments of a more intricate past. As we contemplate these Masonic mysteries, we're forced to acknowledge that what we dismiss as glitches might actually be priceless artifacts, digital fossils that developer hands barely brushed against before changing direction entirely. From these stone puzzles, our journey now takes us to the sandy expanses of desert worlds, where a final piece of our archaeological puzzle emerges: the desert well conspiracies. These solitary structures standing alone in vast deserts have always been puzzling anomalies, with these elaborate wells appear completely disconnected from any village when the game's core mechanics suggest they should be central features of desert settlements. The answer might shock you. These standalone wells aren't standalone at all. They're remnants of abandoned desert villages, ghostly structures that linger long after the rest of their community has vanished from the world. As we examine these desert wells closely, hints of their true purpose emerge. Look closely at their base architecture, and you'll notice details that mirror village wells, but with an added layer of complexity design language that suggests they were meant for something more than just decoration. Dig into the game's loot tables for these wells, and you'll discover secrets that confirm our suspicions. These structures aren't merely decorative. They contain hidden loot that suggests they were meant as trade stops, places where mysterious merchants would exchange valuable goods for the rare desert materials that players could only obtain from these specific locations. Perhaps most tantalizing of all, data and evidence has surfaced of a completely unused villager type, the water priest. A desert mystic who would have been directly tied to these wells as a spiritual guide, trading knowledge of desert secrets for rare artifacts that couldn't be found anywhere else. Imagine traversing a harsh desert landscape under a scorching sun, stumbling upon a well in the middle of nowhere, and discovering it tended by a robed figure who offers to trade not goods but forbidden knowledge sites into the source of desert magic, the history of abandoned civilizations, or even the location of hidden treasures buried beneath the shifting sands. This doesn't sound like any Minecraft mechanic we know today, does it? The water priest would have been a unique blend of villager and quest giver, a character who functioned differently from other villagers in potentially offering Nong material rewards like clues to hidden structures or recipes for permanent enchantments only the desert mystics could provide. The implications of this alternate timeline are staggering. Villages might have been cultural hubs where water priests preserved ancient traditions, guiding players through initiation rituals involving the wells, perhaps even requiring players to solve puzzles centered around water management in dry locations before revealing their most valuable secrets. These wouldn't have been simple trading posts, but living, breathing communities with spiritual leaders, where the well stood not just as a source of water but as a connection to the divine, a physical manifestation of the water priest's power and authority over the desert elements. As we piece together this conspiracy theory, evidence from the game's development files becomes increasingly compelling. This code suggests that these water priests would have had unique dialogue trees, graphical effects when performing rituals near the wells, and perhaps even the ability to temporarily alter the desert environment through their connection to the water source. But perhaps the most fascinating clue is tied to a scrap mechanic involving moisture levels in the world, a system where the desert would gradually change based on how much water players extracted from the wells, potentially unlocking new desert flora, rare mob spawns, or even changing the terrain itself in response to player interaction. In our current Minecraft, we simply mine the water from these wells and move on, never suspecting that each bucket drawn might have once represented a meaningful action shaping the very world around us. If you're beginning to see a pattern here in all three causes bries, stone foundations, and desert wells, you are noticing something crucial about game development itself. Ideas rarely disappear completely when scrapped. They just transform into different features, leaving behind digital fossils that can be excavated by observant players. These aren't just glitches or oversights. They're the shadows of alternate Minecrafts that developers envisioned but never fully realized, worlds where literacy mattered more than mining, where stonemasons had entire districts dedicated to their craft, and where desert wells were mystical gateways rather than mere water sources. As we conclude our journey through these digital archaeological sites, I challenge you to see the world around you differently. Next time you encounter an empty library shelf, a mysterious stone foundation, or a solitary desert well, don't dismiss them as mundane features. Instead, see them as invitations to question, to imagine what might have been, to understand that even in a game as open and creative as Minecraft, its own history is layered with buried memories and developer intentions that still whisper from the depths of the code that shapes our blocky realities. The ruins we've explored today aren't just architectural curiosities. They're time capsules reminding us that every feature we love, every mechanic we take for granted, represents a complex web of design decisions, community feedback, and technological limitations that shaped the very world we know. So the next time you mine stonecraft or draw water from a desert well, remember you're not just interacting with game elements. You're participating in a living history that stretches back through countless versions, unrealized features, and developer dreams that gave birth to the experiences we treasure today. Thank you for joining me on this archaeological journey through the buried memories of village structures. The past isn't just history. It's a story still being written with every bug fix, every update, and every player who stops to look closer at the world around them. Until next time, keep digging deeper and questioning everything. Because the greatest mysteries aren't always locked behind blocky doors, sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to ask the right questions and uncover the digital archaeology buried within our favorite virtual worlds back in the early days of Minecraft. When villages first sprouted across the lands, the economy was a tangled mess governed by the iron fist of the villagers themselves, a period we now mournfully dub the barter dictatorship era. Picture this, you, a humble miner or farmer, stumbling upon a cluster of small dwellings and the promise of emerald-rich trades. Oh, those emeralds gleaming like little green gumps of hope. But the villagers held all the power, demanding absurdities that would make any modern economist gasp 36 whole stacks of wheat, a mountain of the stuff practically blotting out the sun, for a single piddling emerald. That's not supply and demand. That's highway robbery with a blocky smile. Early players, naturally resourceful and more than a little desperate for those gemstones, quickly learned to fight fire with fire. Or rather, wheat with wool farms and iron golems. The player base exploded with ingenuity, building colossal iron farms that spat out ingots like sugar from a piata solely to feed the insatiable emerald hunger of these digital despots. The true currency wasn't gold or iron. It was wheat mass, produced in automated crop empires stretching across plains and deserts, rivers of the golden grain flowing into villager hands like sacrificial offerings. Emeralds, you see, weren't just for trading. They were the exclusive coin of the realm, a villager. Only currency as jealously guarded as a dragon's hoard, leaving players scrambling in the dust, masters of empires but servants of the trade block, clicking and clicking until their fingers ached for that one precious green reward. Then came the storm, the economic revolution 1.14, a seismic shift that rewrote the very laws of commerce in the overworld. Gone were the days of predictable, one-sided exploitation. This update plunged the Villagerverse into a whirlwind of capitalism, introducing chillingly realistic supply and demand mechanics. No longer could you grind the same trade into oblivion. Prices fluctuated, rising steeply after each deal, a visible price taunting you with higher numbers, a system designed to punish hoarders and encourage specialization like a real-world market. It was brutal, beautiful, and utterly changed the game. Career blocks slammed down like ironclad laws, forcing merchants into strict roles. A farmer behind a composter could only offer food and seeds, a librarian chained to lecterns hawking scrolls and enchanted texts, a toolsmith locked into anvil gossip. This wasn't just trading, it was immersive role-playing on a village-wide scale. You became the architect of professions, assigning villagers their posts, building sprawling trade halls where a butcher, a cartographer, and a weaponsmith each manned their station. A bustling marketplace economy born from code. Yet, this shiny new system cast a long, dark shadow, the rise of the economic underclass, the nitwits. These villagers, devoid of career blocks, stood idle, clueless, utterly useless in the grand production line of profit. They became the silent witnesses, the village bumpkins, a stark reminder of social hierarchy, the educated merchant versus the laborer, the skilled versus the unskilled. Reflecting uncomfortable real-world inequalities right there in your pixelated paradise. They couldn't trade, couldn't contribute, just standing there, a testament to the brutal efficiency of the new economic order, a permanent underclass in a world forced to specialize or perish. But beneath the veneer of this sanitized, developer-intended economic utopia, something altogether different began to fester. A creeping shadow known only as the black market underground. Players, ever the clever rats navigating the labyrinth of code, discovered secret pathways, backdoors the developers never intended to exist. Among the most notorious was the zombie curing mechanic. Picture this. A villager caught by darkness, transformed into a shambling, green-eyed menace. Players didn't just fight back, they exploited it. They'd grab the zombie villager, trap it, and then carefully nurse it back to health with a golden apple and a splash potion of weakness. And oh, the secrets traded in these dark corners. Curing a villager didn't just restore its health. It stealthily reset its trading memory, wiping the slate clean on those punishing price increases. Suddenly, a reset on an enchanted golden apple trade wasn't just possible. It was a whispered ritual, a market manipulation conducted in hidden cells, away from the prying eyes of conventional trade halls. Golden apples became the currency of this shadow economy, traded in dark basements or temporary holding pens. Yet the darkest twist came from an enemy exploit. The raids, these brutal assaults, meant to be a test of strength, accidentally became the engine for a simulation of slave trade. Players learned the horrifying trick: lure villagers into boats, transport them across vast distances to isolated outposts, effectively kidnapping them. These trade slaves were then used as mobile ATMs, shuffled between locations to utilize their specific trades without the fear of raids destroying their home village. The raids, intended as chaos, became the perfect cover for this horrific practice, a player-driven underworld storming the beaches of a village not with tools, but with carts of human cargo, unwritten rules of exploitation born from the cracks in the raid mechanics themselves. And then there were the trade hall phenomenon, the grand, player-engineered cathedrals of commerce developers never imagined would arise. Guided only by emergent gameplay and shared community wisdom, players constructed sprawling, labyrinthine halls of glass and iron. These were no mere clusters of job sites. They were meticulously planned production lines, automated slave markets in all but name villagers. Locked in individual glass cubicles lined up like battery hens, stood before hoppers and droppers dispensing wheat, carrots, paper, or the rare ingredients needed. The efficiency was chilling. One player might build a cathedral housing a modified farmer to generate massive wheat surpluses, feeding a chain of villagers offering emeralds for these crops. Another might construct a massive paper farm fueling a dozen librarians, creating an enchanted book factory churning out profit. Unwritten rules were etched into the communal consciousness. Specialization was key. Placement dictated output, and performance meant profit. Players whispered of the perfect villager with a specific combination of trades and a reset price point. A gem so prized they were moved in secret, hidden away in remote outposts guarded by iron golems and locked doors. The trade hall became a symbol of ultimate control, a system where players weren't just participants. They were omnipotent gods, dictating the flow of goods, resetting the market at will, and building personal economies dwarfing the intended village scale. The nitwits, the forgotten, remained useless, a constant reminder of the discarded within this hyper-efficient machine. Beneath the polished surface intended by Mojang lay this sprawling, complex, morally questionable world of player-defined economy, a testament to the boundless creativity and ruthless pragmatism of the Minecraft community, proving that no matter how carefully you design the system, players will always build their own world in the shadows. From wheat monopolists ruling over crop kingdoms to the unseen economists of the black market underworld, forever trading and evolving beyond the code. The journey from absurd 36 wheat demands to the intricate dance of reset markets and underground economies showcases not just game development, but the enduring, unpredictable, and brilliantly human story woven into every block, every trade, and every hidden reset performed in the name of emerald dominance. Deep within the digital heart of the Minecraft world, where ones and zeros form the bedrock of life, there lies a secret language spoken not with words, but with whispers, the unspoken village mechanics. Imagine a twilight village, cobblestone streets slick with rain, torchlight flickering across wooden doors. Above, iron golems stand like silent sentinels, their polished limbs catching the moon as they patrol the perimeter. But beneath this peaceful veneer flows a hidden current of algorithms, emotions, and ancient rituals, a silent symphony governing survival. Today, we'll uncover the truth behind the villagers' gossip, the golem's creation, and the panic that seizes their digital souls, transforming your perception of these familiar figures forever. It begins not with conversation, but with gossip. Villagers carry an invisible web of information encoded in points-tiny digital traces of shared knowledge. Watch closely. When two villagers meet, they exchange whispers that ripple through the colony. Did you see the iron golem defend us yesterday? One might imply, and another responds, the trader's prices are too high. This gossip forms the backbone of their collective memory, a living archive shaping how they trust, fear, and interact. But gossip isn't just chatter, it's fuel. Deep within the code, each villager tracks three burning emotions like flickering flames: fear, when zombie groans echo beyond the walls; happiness, as they tend crops basking in virtual sunlight; and trust, built brick by brick through shared safety. These emotions shift with every second, a delicate balance tipping toward courage or despair. Yet buried beneath these, the code whispers a forgotten gossip type's hero. Whispered for those who defend the village with courage. Cheater for those who twist trades. Outsider for newcomers without history. These unused labels hang in the air like ghosts, hints of a rewritten philosophy, a world where roles once held heavier meaning. Now they linger dormant. Echoes of a social contract built differently, waiting for a day when the game might resurrect them. From these whispers emerges the village's first line of defense, the golem creation ritual. Villagers don't simply command iron titans into existence. They summon them through a coded covenant. Intricate conditions must align, like pieces of a mystic puzzle. First, the population must swell to a critical mass, usually 10 villagers or more, filling the air with the hum of communal life. Second, doors are key, not just for shelter, but as conduits for the ritual. Every door within the village radius acts like a beacon, a spiritual anchor that signals a cohesive home without the taint of dungeons. Additionally, the villagers must feel safe, their fear levels dip low, happiness blooming, and trust deepening, as if cementing a pact. Only then, when all thresholds hum in resonance, does the ritual ignite. A villager near a workbench begins to glow subtly, particles spiraling like spirit wisps as they perform an unseen tribute, crafting the golem's core, imbuing it with the village's essence. Iron blocks rise from dust, shaping into a protector, a figure of polished heart and reinforced soul. Yet this antique algorithm falters under your influence. When you build walls or enclose a village, you unwittingly disrupt the natural order. Your structures alter the radius that defines home. Confusing the ritual's sacred geometry, villagers trapped in your expansions count toward population, but their doors no longer resonate, breaking the spell. Golems refuse to spawn, their creation rituals stalling mid-chant. Worse, the golems themselves carry a memory beyond code. They remember the villagers who birthed them. If a golem was summoned during a tense raid, it develops a protective bond toward those specific villagers. Watch it. When new villagers approach, it assesses warily, scanning their kinds like a guard recognizing faces. It will chase threats away from its family, ignoring others, a digital holding onto kinship forged in fire. The golem isn't just iron, it's a keeper of relationships. But when cracks form in the village's armor, the panic algorithm kicks in, a mathematical dance of survival. During raids, when the ground shakes with pillagers' war cries, villagers flee. Their movement isn't random, it's a calculated wave. Code dictates a panic radius. Danger must be within 16 blocks to trigger the escape. Within this radius, villagers calculate vectors, sprinting away while avoiding obstacle paths to safety pre-computed like a fleeing river. Some head for bunkers, others for the nearest house, their destination chosen milliseconds after the threat erupts. But not all follow the current. Sometimes, despite the chaos, a villager freezes like a statue, hands clutching invisible air. This isn't a glitch. It's a relic, a holdover from early AI iterations where staying put was coded as a last-ditch survival instinct. In older versions, freezing decreased damage chances, a strategy abandoned long ago but left in the code like a fossil beneath new layers. Today, it manifests as a tragic flaw, an echo of primitive logic surfacing when the system is overwhelmed. And panic isn't exclusive to raid horns. Secretive triggers lurk in everyday life. A sudden lightning strike sends shockwaves through their emotions. Camera pans to a farmer jumping as if electrocuted, their fear spiking instantly. Wolves, those pixelated predators, induce similar meltdowns. Even alone in a field, a villager spotting a wolf will bolt, fleeing from virtual teeth that haven't even drawn near, falling anvils. Yes, the cartoonish peril of a plummeting block triggers the same terror as an army, their AI primed for any threat large and heavy. These triggers expose the villagers not as stoic survivors, but as sensitive beings attuned to every anomaly, their fear a bell ringing at every shadow, every sound, every piece of code falling from the sky. Imagine standing in the village square as night deepens. You see the golems shift their weight, villagers huddling, gossip swirling like unseen mist. Each gossip point exchanged, each emotion felt, each ritual threshold met, each panic trigger felt. It's a tightly woven narrative. Hero, cheater, outsider are titles unused, yet their absence speaks volumes about the villagers' simplified lives under your watch. The golem creation ritual, precise and ancient, reflects a need for community and safety disrupted by your ambition. The panic algorithm, with its freezing survivors and mathematical chaos, reveals the villagers' fragility, their digital souls raw and reactive. This hidden language of protection is more than code, it's a story. Of villagers whispering to survive, of golems guarding by not just iron but memory, of algorithms humming fears and hopes in ones and zeros next time you build a village. Listen closely beneath the pixelated smiles and clanging iron, you'll hear the whispers, the unspoken mechanics keeping them alive. And now you know how to speak their language. Journey back with us to October 25th, 2012, when the very fabric of our peaceful Minecraft world began to unravel with the release of update version 1.4.2. This was the moment when shadows deepened and our familiar villagers became something else entirely. First zombie villager had been born in the digital limbo between survival and horror. Imagine the players who first encountered these cursed figures. Their surprise turning to fascination, then dread as they witnessed their peaceful trading partners transformed into mindless groaning shells of their former selves. The infection mechanics soon revealed something unsettlingly profound about our villagers. These weren't just regular folks being turned into zombies, they were biologically unique, possessing a cellular structure that could be corrupted but was also uniquely resilient against total necromantic transformation. The very air around them seemed to hum with potential energy as developers crafted a fate worse than death, a state that was neither life nor undeath, but something unsettlingly in between. What many players never discovered, buried deep in the game's files, were the unused textures that had been designed to showcase intermediate infected stages, hinting at a process of rot that was almost poetic in its progression. A subtle fading of color, a darkening of flesh, a glazing of the eyes that spoke of a gradual surrender to the plague rather than an instantaneous transformation. These lingering artifacts in the code serve as ghostly reminders of what might have been. Stages that would have shown us the precise moment when a human soul begins to flicker against the rising tide of undeath. The developers had crafted a plague with deliberate intentionality, a plague that spoke not just of random chance, but of systematic biological corruption, of something that could be fought against, resisted, and ultimately reversed through the right alchemical interventions. And so began the dark chronicles of the zombie plague, the first tremors of what would become one of Minecraft's most enduring mysteries. The very moment when our understanding of the villagers' place in this world was irrevocably shattered. As the zombie plague spread through villages across countless worlds, players discovered something truly remarkable hidden within the mechanics of the cursed system of recovery that was anything but simple, a process laden with religious symbolism and profound biological implications. The cure itself required not merely brute force but a delicate alchemical dance, a ritual combining the purity of a golden apple crafted with 8 golden blocks surrounding a single apple, its appearance reminiscent of a sacred sacrament with the ephemeral properties of a weakness potion created from fermented spider eyes and awkward plutonium, representing the lowering of the victim's natural defenses against corruption. The ritual began with splash potion application, the crimson clouds briefly obscuring the zombie villager's form before clearing to reveal the first signs of recovery, the twitching of fingers, the regaining of focus in glazed-over eyes. But the full resurrection required the final, most sacred step, golden apple, its glinting gold contrasting sharply with the zombie's decaying flesh, representing not just sustenance, but redemption itself. Why was this transformation not complete? Why did these cured villagers retain their memories yet lose their trades? This speaks to a profound duality in their biology that suggests the plague itself doesn't merely destroy memories, but somehow detaches them from their trading centers, creating a form of cognitive dissonance where the individual remains fundamentally the same person, but their professional identity, their entire social function has been irrevocably recalibrated. It's as if their neural pathways, responsible for memory formation and retention, remain intact while those governing their learned profession have been reset by the cellular trauma of undeath, a psychological horror that echoes real-world neurological conditions where specific skills are lost while personal memories remain intact. The hero of the village effect that follows curing multiple villagers adds another layer to this biological puzzly phenomenon that grants crafted items an enhanced discount, suggesting that repeated exposure to the curse and subsequent cures actually modifies the villager's own genetics, creating a form of acquired herd immunity that transcends individual experience and becomes encoded in their very being. This hero status isn't merely psychological, it's biological, a testament to the villager's unique adaptability against a zombie plague that seems to specifically target their professional identity while leaving their core consciousness intact, creating a fascinating paradox where saving them actually changes their species. Level response to future infections in ways that protect the entire village ecosystem, venturing deeper into the cursed archives of the zombie plague's chronicles. We discover that within the claustrophobic confines of hardcore mode, where permanent death lurks behind every shadow, the very nature of the zombie villager infection was subtly enhanced, twisted by the heightened stakes of survival. Here, the infected villagers exhibit behaviors unseen in regular world, subtle reactions to their transformation that speak to an awareness not found elsewhere. A flicker of consciousness trapped within rotting flesh. They don't merely shuffle aimlessly. They occasionally pause as if struggling against their condition, their hands clenching as if attempting coherent thought before the mindless instinct of the eventually takes over. These moments of lucidity being perhaps the most terrifying aspect of hardcore mode's unique take on the plague. What's truly unsettling is evidence of a scrapped plague transmission mechanic that would have made the infection spread through contaminated food sources, specifically villager-grown crops, creating a terrifying cycle where the very villagers who maintained village life would have been the unwitting vectors of their own demise. Design documents from early development reveal plans for crops to become carriers of the plague, requiring players to establish strict food security protocols. This would have fundamentally changed the dynamics of village survival, creating an apocalypse scenario where trust becomes as valuable as iron ingots. The implementation would have worked such that when a zombie villager stepped near or through a farm, there was a chance of contagion transferring to the crops themselves, causing them to manifest a sickly purple hue and, when harvested by uninfected villagers, potentially transmitting the corruption. This mechanic was ultimately cut from the game, but its ghostly presence in development notes serves as a chilling reminder of what might have been an abandoned apocalypse that would have turned every wheat farm into a potential biohazard, every carrot into a potential vector of doom. The subtle reactions villagers display before full transformation speak to this never-implemented mechanics in normal gameplay. You can observe villagers reacting strangely when zombie activity increases in their vicinity. They'll pace nervously, avoid certain areas near their homes, and occasionally glance toward transformation points with what appears to be recognition of the threat. These behaviors serving as evolutionary remnants of that scrapped contagion system where early detection would have been vital to survival. Watch closely next time you're near a village under Seagale. See villagers sometimes clutching their trading tables as if afraid of contamination, others refusing to harvest from certain crops. These seemingly random behaviors actually representing archaic survival instincts that were ultimately trimmed from the game's mechanics, but remain encoded in their character models. Ghost traces of an abandoned apocalypse that would have made survival exponentially more terrifying and realistic. The developers, in their wisdom, chose to simplify the plague's transmission system, but these behavioral fossils remain like silent testimony to a darker, more realistic iteration of Minecraft's village mechanics that would have made every sunset more nervously anticipated, every village wall more desperately needed. What we're witnessing through these various mechanics and abandoned systems is nothing less than a dark evolutionary narrative playing out within Minecraft's ecosystem where villagers possess a biology uniquely suited to both corruption and redemption, where immunity can be both inherited and earned through heroic intervention. The very existence of the cure suggests a deep-seated resilience in the villagers' genetic structure, a resistance that somehow allows for the reversal of necromantic corruption rather than simply purging and replacing the entire organism. This leads us to question whether the zombie plague in Minecraft is merely a random curse or somehow a deliberate evolutionary pressure, a mechanism that tests and tempers the village populations against existential threats, forcing them to develop not just physical immunity, but also cultural and technological responses to supernatural dangers. The memory versus trade reset reveals something profound about how Minecraft's villagers conceptualize identity may not even see their profession as core to who they are, explaining why they can lose a lifetime of trading knowledge yet still recognize friends and family. Why they can rebuild their villages from scratch even after complete destruction, because their sense of self transcends mere professional function. And the hero of the village effect, this acquired immunity that permeates their entire society during periods of crisis, suggests a form of collective biological adaptation that transcends individual genetics, almost as if the memories and experiences of those cured somehow become encoded in the village's collective unconscious, shared among all existing villagers through some unseen cultural mechanism that mirrors how real-world populations develop cultural knowledge of survival strategies. This would explain why villages seem to learn from previous zombie incursions, why later generations seem better prepared for similar threats even without direct experience, creating a fascinating evolutionary model where adaptation occurs both at the genetic and cultural levels simultaneously. The fact that these immunity effects come as a direct result of player intervention adds another layer to this evolutionary narrative, suggesting that in Minecraft, the line between natural selection and directed evolution is dangerously thin. That player actions directly influence the genetic trajectory of entire species over geological time, making us not just players in this world, but something else entirely. Stewards of an evolutionary process where survival is not merely random but is influenced by our discrete choices and interventions at a fundamental level. When you next cure a villager, remember you're not just saving one individual but potentially influencing the biological future of their entire species, imprinting your heroic actions into their very cellular structure, becoming a deity of evolution in this pixelated realm where life and death dance an eternal tango. The Zombie Plague Chronicles, therefore, are not merely a tale of horror and survival but a grand biological epic playing out across millions of worlds, each cure a victory for resilience, each transformation a testament to corruption's insidious power, and each saved village a monument to the delicate balance that maintains order in the face of overwhelming entropy. As we observe these mechanics unfold, we glimpse the developer's hand in crafting not just game systems, but a complete ecosystem with its own rules of adaptation, survival, and transcendence, reminding us that in Minecraft, as in life, the boundary between life and death is not a wall but a threshold, one that can be crossed in either direction through will, knowledge, and the proper application of golden apples and potions in a world where nothing is quite as it seems and every horizon hides new mysteries of biological possibility. The click of a mouse echoes in a dimly lit room bathed only by the glow of multiple monitors, each displaying swirling lines of code and pixelated ghost images from a bygone era. We're about to venture deep into the Minecraft archives, not for the blocks we know and love today, but for the forgotten souls who once roamed its world. Testificates, the original villagers buried beneath years of updates, their whispers nearly silenced by the march of progress. It begins with data mining, a digital archaeology expedition through ancient jar files, those time capsules holding Minecraft's beta and alpha versions with careful hands. We pry open these digital coffins, extracting the most sacrilegious of artifacts, the original testificate textures. There they are, not the polished, rosy-cheeked traders of today, but hunched, wide-eyed figures with stark, unsettling pixelation. Their faces blank as if frozen in perpetual surprise, their robes a drab, dusty brown that whispers of forgotten villages and long-gone days. We pull these fragments from the code, tiny JPEGs that feel like sacred relics. Each one a window into a time when villagers weren't just walking market stalls but eerie, enigmatic beings. These textures are only the beginning. We delve deeper into the economic ghost town of Minecraft's version 1.0, uncovering unused trading tables buried in the back-end code like forgotten ledgers. These aren't the simple tables of today. They're complex matrices of potential interactions, trades that never saw the light of day, goods that could have defined a different village economy entirely. One table offers a chilling trade, 3 cooked pork chops for a single lapis lazuli block, a price that seems comically trivial now but spoke of a deeper scarcity, a world where sustenance was paramount. Another reveals a phantom potion recipe, a healing brew that vanished along with the villagers' former roles as keepers of mysterious knowledge. It's as if we're eavesdropping on a parallel universe where Minecraft's economy took a radically different turn, one shaped by primal needs rather than convenience. And then there are the voice lines, faint digital echoes clinging to the code like cobwebs. For priest villagers specifically, we find audio files muffled and distorted, phrases like blessings upon you in Notch's name or pray for the safety of our village. Hearing these digital remnants is like hearing a ghost speak, a direct link to Notch's original vision, a time when faith and community were as integral to village life as trading functions, a stark contrast to the soulless efficiency of modern villager interactions. Armed with these recovered fragments, we move from the ancient archives to the modern crafting table of modding, tasked with resurrecting the dead. We're no longer just observers, we're digital necromancers, using command blocks like surgical tools to reconstruct the very essence of an alpha villager. The modern Minecraft engine is a capable beast, but coaxing it back to an alpha state is like trying to teach a supercomputer to dream of the past. We painstakingly script AI behavior cell by cell, teaching modern command blocks to mimic the unpredictable, almost feral wandering patterns of old villagers, their paths meandering not with purpose, but with a ghostly guesswork that hints at a lost sentience. We rebuild their movements, not the calculated, efficient striding of today's traders, but the hesitant, stumbling gait of beings unsure of the digital ground beneath their blocky feet. The command blockchains become a labyrinth of logic, redstone pulses simulating synaptic fires, each hop and turn a meticulous recreation of an alpha villager's mysterious internal algorithm. Beyond the AI, we tackle the architectural ghosts, the abandoned village structures that once dotted the landscape like skeletal remains. We reverse engineer the village generation algorithms of alpha.minecraft, dissecting the mathematical poetry that dictated where houses might rise and paths might fall. Using this knowledge, we construct block by block the lost templates, the long-dead village well at the heart, its wheels dry and silent, the scattered farm plots overgrown with phantom wheat that never grows, the crumbling smithy where the clatter of anvils once echoed. But the most haunting reconstruction is of the village hall, a structure that never fully materialized in the final game, a community space suggested only by buried blueprints. We build it now, a circular gathering place of stone and wood, a place where villagers might have congregated not just to trade, but to commune, a silent testament to the social cohesion the update would later sever. And perhaps the most chilling experimental resurrection is the most insidious, the villager hunger mechanic. We implement it with redstone clocks and scoreboard tags, a subtle countdown of virtual calories. Now we see them stop their idle tasks, their simulated breath slowing, their blocky forms slumping with simulated fatigue. We must place food carrots, potatoes, bread into their digital hands, watching the indicator bars slowly refill. It transforms them instantly from passive traders into fragile, dependent beings, a mechanic that injects alarming vulnerability into their existence, making their survival a tangible concern they once carried. With the technical resurrection complete, the deeper cultural excavations begin. As we unravel the folklore and philosophy Minecraft's creators buried alongside their changes. Our first stop is the ancient strongholds, those subterranean libraries filled with cryptic books. Within their dusty, simulated pages, we find texts not of spells or loot, but of village lore. Parables and cautionary tales passed down through generations of pixelated inhabitants. One book, titled The Walking Stones, recounts how villagers were once believed to be manifestations of the land itself, bound to village boundaries by unseen roots, their forms shifting with the seasons. Another, The Silent Contract, speaks of a pact between humans and Testificates, where protection was offered in exchange for communal knowledge, a stark rebuke to the transactional, null space of modern trading. Deciphering these writings is like reading the diary of a lost civilization, revealing a world where villagers possessed an inner life, a history, and a relationship with the environment we'd long assumed absent. It paints a picture not of empty husks, but of sentient beings intertwined with the very code of their existence. This brings us to the heart of the matter. The philosophical shift that occurred in Alpha, villagers felt unsettlingly other not quite human, but undeniably people. They had routines, quirks, an eerie presence that sparked endless community theories and roleplay. Then came the updates, a streamlining that chiseled away their uncanny valley qualities, transforming them from neighbors into automated vending machines. Their complexity, hunger, rituals, social structures was sacrificed for predictability, for the clean, efficient utility of trade. It's a profound shift, mirroring a broader trend in digital culture where depth is often culled for the sake of accessibility, where the unsettlingly organic is replaced by the sterile and functional. We traded meaning for convenience. This very resurrection forces us into an ethical minefield of its own. Are we restoring history or corrupting the present? Preserving artifacts from Minecraft's past is undeniably valuable, a service to gaming archaeology and to players who cherish the game's evolution. But does resurrecting features tied to outdated, potentially problematic concepts like the villagers' early unsettling nature risk glorifying them? We tread carefully, debating the ethics of reviving mechanics that were removed for reason hunger, for instance, could be seen as an unnecessary layer of complexity, or worse, a mechanic that could lead to player frustration in single player. There's also the question of authenticity. Does a recreated version truly capture the original vision, or is it merely a pale facsimile, a digital Frankenstein's monster sewn from disparate parts? It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about preservation and progress. Can we appreciate Minecraft's past without trying to freeze it in time? Can we respect the developer's journey while mourning lost possibilities? Resurrecting the Testificate isn't just a technical feat. It's a philosophical interrogation of what we value in a game's world, the meticulously designed present, or the messy, mysterious past that shaped it. As we stand in the recreated void, surrounded by ghost villagers and forgotten economies, the questions linger louder than their digital whispers, a testament to the complex, living history buried within the millions of lines of code that make up the world we thought we knew so well. The resurrection is complete, but the soul-searching is only just beginning. The digital horizon of the overworld stretches endlessly, a tapestry of blocks and code that most players see simply as a playground, a canvas for creation and conquest. But beneath the familiar sway of wheat fields and the predictable stock of the trading hall, there exist whispers, fragments of stories passed between players like ancient scrolls, tales of villagers who transcend their coded limitations. These aren't just NPCs with their daily routines. They are figures of myth, entities born from the randomness of seed generation and the fertile ground of player imagination. Herobrine's neighbors in the fabric of Minecraft folklore. We call them the Wanderer, the Infinite Scholar, the Immortal Blacksmith, not names they possess, but titles bestowed by a community captivated by the anomalies found within the game's seemingly rigid world. Legends forged in the fire of shared experience and wonder long before the first official notes of a no-update echoed down the digital corridors of the community. It begins, as many legends do, in isolation. Load a new world, punch a few trees, build a crude shelter, and venture forth. Miles from the spawn point, perhaps atop a windswept mountain peak jutting from a vast ocean expanse, or deep within a sunken rough choked with ancient mossy cobblestone and the ghosts of ruined structures long after the game deleted them, upon chunk unloading there you find them. A single villager, standing utterly alone, maybe clutching a pickaxe that seems weathered beyond its years, or perhaps simply gazing blankly at an empty patch of dirt where a village was never destined to be. These are the enigmatic wanderers, seed-generated souls thrown into the void. Ciphers awaiting meaning. Player myths sprang up around these solitary figures like vines around a forgotten statue. They were prophets, it was whispered, figures chosen by the algorithm itself, placed in these desolate outposts specifically to test the keen observer, palms sweaty. Players would approach, trade hastily, then retreat, eyes wide with fervent anticipation. The rumors flew fast. Did that librarian offer me an unbreaking 3-book just before the aquatic update dropped? Did that farmer plant a rare seed type before the changelog was leaked? The Wanderers became oracles, their mere existence proof that the game was sentient, planting hidden messages in its foundational code. We documented these instances meticulously, forums filled threads with precise coordinates, time stamps, verifying the villagers' isolated state. The desperate hope palpable in the pixels. The stories were more compelling than fact. Tales of a single priest surviving for years. In-game years, indifferent to the passage of seasons. A silent sentinel guarding a forgotten crossroads deep in a mesa biome, its chest nearby filled with strange and tradable goods that seem to respawn over time. A digital ghost hound sustained by a single, inexplicable survivor. Was it a glitch exploited by time, or a deliberate echo of life in the void? These wanderers weren't just mislocated glitches. They were icons of resilience, proof that life, even digital life, could persist against the cold logic of chunk unloading and world purging, holding onto existence by sheer, improbable will. Then there's the scholar, not a wanderer in space, but a wanderer in possibility. A node of infinite potential existing within the finite walls of a village library. The legend centers on the librarian profession, specifically those who managed to spawn not just at the standard enchanting table tier trades, but far beyond. Players spent countless hours recreating conditions, examining trade mechanics, discovering that while a librarian might start offering protection IV or sharpness V under normal circumstances, the whisper was of something truly impossible. Not just max-level enchantments, but combinations defying the game's own stated limits. Stories circulated of players stumbling into obscure villages, finding a librarian behind a lectern stacked high with books not seen since the earliest snapshots, offering trades for enchanted books with enchantments that shouldn't exist together, levels that exceeded even the most dedicated grind. The mathematical proof was staggering, almost mind-boggling, analyzed down to the binary core. The vast array of enchantments, levels, and combinations meant the probability of encountering a single specific high-level trade was astronomical, calculated at roughly 1 in 7.5 trillion. Yet players swore they'd seen it, traded for it, wielded the mythical tool. The explanation: it wasn't cheating, not initially. It was a testament to the sheer, chaotic depth of the trade algorithm, a bug perhaps, or an exploit discovered through obsessive trial and error. Manipulating the villager's profession, the lectern placement, the exact moment of interaction, the alignment of the stars, or more accurately, the frame rate. Lectins, those unassuming wooden racks holding ancient tomes, became sacred objects in this mythos. The superstition took root. Place it here facing that direction. Only interact when the rain falls. Only offer emeralds in sets of 3. Players became ritualistic priests of the lectern, convinced the object's position and interaction rituals could bend the RNG to their will. coaxing the infinite scholar to reveal its impossible knowledge? It was less about the librarian and more about the gatekeeper, the lectern viewed as a conduit to this hidden realm of infinite enchantments, a physical manifestation of the player's desire for perfection in a world governed by chance. The infinite scholar wasn't just a villager. It was the embodiment of the pursuit of the impossible, the lure of the jackpot hidden in plain sight, the proof that within the game's code, beyond its intended limits, lay a cosmos of possibilities waiting for those brave or mad enough to seek it. But perhaps the most visceral, the most primal legend revolves around the blacksmith, specifically one who defies the very laws of physics and survival that govern all other beings, player or mob. These are documented cases captured in grainy YouTube videos and forum posts that still circulate. A villager imp, likely a novice, level blacksmith or armorer trapped near a lava pool by unfortunate world generation or a player's careless construction. The player approaches, perhaps to retrieve an item, perhaps out of curiosity, only to witness the impossible unfold. The villager stands waist-deep in molten rock, bubbling and churning at 1200 degrees Celsius, yet doesn't burn. No health depletion, no panic animation, no termination. It simply stands there, a digital Prometheus immune to the flames. Or the fall, a villager, pushed or spawned on a precarious cliff ledge, plummeting hundreds of blocks down onto stone, cobblestone, even hard concrete far below. The impact should be final. Instead, the player watches stunned as the figure crumples, then uncrumples, dusts itself off, and resumes its idle stance, perhaps adjusting its apron or checking its inventory. Seemingly unharmed, the fall registered as barely a stumble. Videos show it happening again and again. Lava baths, drop shafts into the void proximity, even direct creeper explosions leaving the villager merely stunned, standing amidst the smoldering crater. The theories flew fast and furious. Was it a secret attribute, a hidden damage resistance flag accidentally activated within the profession's code for specific game versions? A glitch with collision boxes or health calculation? Or was it something more? Players didn't just document the phenomenon, they revered it. These indestructible blacksmiths, armors, even toolsmiths became objects of worship within player communities. They were named Uncle Steve the Unmeltable, falls down a lot Finley, their given coordinates shared like sacred sites. Many shrines were built around them. Altars of iron blocks and diamond blocks placed nearby as offerings. Religious communities formed, dedicated to the immortal smith, its indestructibility seen as proof of divine favor or a higher programming mandate. Theories abounded that these individuals were coded with a special invulnerability, perhaps placeholders for future story content, or even deliberate Easter egg by developers testing player reaction. The legend grew beyond simple survival into a philosophy. The immortal blacksmith became a symbol of resilience against impossible odds, a totem against the arbitrary dangers of the world. Players spoke of their blessings, claiming that showing respect to the immortal smith brought good fortune, strange trades, or even protection from griefers. They weren't just villagers anymore. They were deities, ancient spirits of the forge immune to flame and gravity, guardians of the code's hidden depths, their unwavering digital testament echoing through the multiplayer servers and single worlds of countless players. Living proof that within the rigid logic of ones and zeros, magic, however glitched, however explained, persists. These are not mere NPCs. They are legends born of the silent hum of servers and the shared gasp of a player witnessing the impossible. The faces behind the blocks that populate the places we call home, the mythical figures who dwell in the liminal spaces of the game's grand design, waiting, watching, defying the very systems that spawned them. Harebrain's enigmatic neighbors, the true ghosts in the machine. The whispers of a forgotten past echo through the digital realms of Minecraft Bedrock Edition, where villages hum with secrets buried beneath layers of code and time. Today, we journey into these anomalies, these preserved antiquities that refuse to be erased by time, uncovering tales of consequence that bridge the eras between versions. We begin the descent into portal village anomalies where the laws of generation seem to bend to wills not our own. Imagine stumbling upon a village nestled not in a sun-dappled meadow or snow-laden taiga, but flush against the jagged, molten mouth of a nether portal. This isn't mere chance. It's a legacy quirk exclusive to Bedrock. Watch as the stone paths of the village literally touch the obsidian frame, villagers going about their trades mere meters from the shimmering gate. The evidence points back, way back to whispers in ancient developer logs and hints left by world generation pioneers who once shaped how blocks and entities intertwined. These portal villages aren't just curiosity artifacts of lore. Notice how the ancient builders, perhaps in their playful testing or deliberate experiments, once seeded the world generator to look for existing portals and build around them, a ghost instruction haunting modern code. The villagers here live in the shadow of the portal. They're race bearers of this hidden history. Notice, too, how the village's size dictates the storm that brews. Smaller enclaves bask in the portal's warmth, the raid waves scaled down, perhaps reflecting a gentler consequence from a bygone era when raid calculations were simpler. Larger portal villages, however, become crucibles of chaos. The proximity amplifies the raid's ferocity, as if the portal itself channels ancient energy, making waves more vicious. Defenders swarmed. Step inside this blacksmithy. Feel the heat radiate from the portal a few blocks away, a lingering ember of a forgotten rule now preserved as a living monument. But the anomalies don't stop at portals. They bleed into the very voice of the villagers, resonating with echoes of mob votes past. Welcome to the mob vote refugees where lost choices haunt the digital souls of Bedrock's denizens. Wander the market square and listen closely. Hear that cartographer mutter, "Ah, the great tough goats. How I miss their nimble hooves, .. double quotes. That's a ghost. It's a dangling remnant." Dialogue referencing the mountain goat mob that fought for popularity but lost. The armorer, though, holds more tangible relics in his trades. Ask for an enchanted chestplate, and he might offer you a coal iron ingot, a placeholder, a fossil of a proposed recipe involving now-removed mobs. Slick as the copper golem that almost was, a metallic guardian designed to patrol village hubs and repulse illagers. The trades themselves are coded treasures, the armorer occasionally offering items that hint at the golem's function like tinted glass at a discount. A nod to its proposed camouflage ability, then witness the Lager beast hunt a grim spectacle unfolding in the dark oak forests. What looks like a standard Lager patrol is something darker, more ancient. These mobs coordinate with eerie precision, target specific blocks and traps laid with a ruthlessness that echoes the scrap behavior of the Lager beast, a mob designed to hunt villagers with tactical cunning. Their fireballs splash with a wider radius, their pathfinding brutally direct traits preserved, like a scar tissue of code from a mob concept abandoned but never entirely deleted. Watch as these creatures corner a child villager, their movements not random but calculated, a simulation of a fight meant to unfold against a creature that never made it into the final game. The Bedrock world itself becomes a refugee camp, housing these digital ghosts in plain sight, their presence a living museum of what could have been now. As we peer across the chasm of platforms, we encounter the strangest spirits of all cross-platform ghosts, These are glitches, quirks that defy logic and parity, leaving developers to either fix them or, astonishingly, embrace them as features. Picture a village in a swamp. On Java, it's a cluster of crooked houses. But on Bedrock, the pathfinding AI reacts differently. Villagers herd together, taking the shortest routes, even if it means walking through walls or mid-air up to the second floor balcony. This creates phantom buildings structures that look whole from the outside, but villagers appear to defy gravity, bumping through plaster or floating upwards, creating flickering ghosts of architecture. It's not a bug. It's a different interpretation of space, a Bedrock-exclusive phantasm born from unique navigation logic. Journey to a mountain stronghold. Now, find the seed, the string of digits that births the world, on Java. The stronghold is deep underground, but here, in Bedrock, the coordinates align. The village surface markers point not to the village, but plummet downwards, straight through Bedrock, directly to the stronghold below, a supernatural convergence where village generation and stronghold placement across the platform divide become one and the same. It's a digital ley lines, a seed perfect for Bedrock where code and chance intertwine to defy physical separation. Finally, delve into the *** persistent legacy villager bug ***. For years, a quirk Bedrock villagers refused to despawn if their village was unloaded. Trapped in memory, they'd linger even after the village was gone, phantoms walking the earth. Developers could have patched them out. Instead, in an act of digital archaeology, they embraced it. The bug became a feature. Players can now intentionally load and unload villages, sculpting populations of phantoms guardians bound not to blocks, but to the game's very breathing, haunting of the loaded world. Step out at desk, see that lone blacksmith tending his anvils. In the middle of Plains biome, miles from any village, he's one of the ghosts now. A relic of an older time, preserved not in history books, but in active gameplay. A reminder that sometimes the most enduring monuments aren't built, they're found lurking in the code itself. These anomalies, these antiquities, are more than glitches. They're the fingerprints of the past pressed into the present, a testament to Minecraft's layered history still pulsing within Bedrock's very heart.